There are plenty of exciting sports which, for one reason or another, don't make the Olympic Games, but that doesn't mean they never will. With the inception of more and more exciting new sports these days, it's only a matter of time before some of them make the Games for real. Today, we are discussing some wild sports, which would instantly make the Olympic Games in a much better spectacle. Stay with us. So what's the current state of affairs? Well, as we know, there are those sports we all know and love, like athletics and swimming, that will always be included in the Olympic Games. However, in the build-up to each Olympic year, there are always a plethora of sports that are invited to bring their case as to why they should be included in the next Games. The next Olympics will take place in Paris in 2024 and will include some super modern sports such as breakdancing, sport climbing, skateboarding, and surfing. The inclusion of these sports means that the IOC is obviously thinking ahead and wants to modernize the Games as much as possible, which is great for those who might be involved in some of the less traditional sports. And earlier this summer, it was revealed that no fewer than 9 sports have been invited to present their case as to why they should be included in the 2028 Games in LA. These include sports such as cricket, the second most watched sport in the world, and others like kickboxing, karate, and squash. Which sports do you think should be included in the next couple of Olympic Games? Give us your thoughts below. We're looking at some cool new sports now, starting with chess boxing. Made famous by Staten Island's Wu-Tang Clan in the 1990s via their hit The Mystery of Chess Boxing. It turns out, one Dutchman actually took the theory first conceptualized in a 1970s kung fu movie and actually turned it into a real sport. Of course, just like the name suggests, it combines the super popular sports of both chess and boxing. After a few people took part in rudimentary forms of the game in the 1970s, most notably the Robinson brothers from London, Iep Rubing, founder of modern-day chess boxing, put on the first event back in 2003. He also managed to bring both the Dutch Boxing Association and the Dutch Chess Federation together to put on the first World Championship fight that same year. Rubing himself became the first ever chess boxing world champion. After taking on fellow Dutch middleweight Jean-Louis Veenstra, Rubing won the fight after his opponent failed to move a chess piece in the 11th round. Sadly, Rubing passed away in 2020, before his dream of taking chess boxing to the Olympics could be realized. Would you guys like to see chess boxing in the Olympic Games? Next up, we're talking kabaddi. Kabaddi is something similar to the British children's playground game British Bulldog, of which there are bound to be a ton of variations globally. The game involves 2 teams of 7 players each, who must take turns sending a raider into enemy territory, the other side of a field about the size of a tennis court, and also involves aspects of wrestling and tag. The game has its origins in India, and while raiding, the offensive player must chant the word kabaddi. All the while, the defending team must link arms and do their best to not allow the raider to break through. But the likelihood is this one will cause a bruise or two, so be careful when deciding to get involved in a game of kabaddi. The game also appeared in the 2016 South Asian Games, proving that there is a precedent for it to appear at big events. As you might expect, both men's and women's events were won by the Indian teams. Would you guys like to see kabaddi at the Olympic Games? Let us know what you think below. We have slap fighting next. Don't go anywhere. Developed in Russia in the early part of this century, slap fighting is as brutal as it sounds. Competitors have to stand in front of each other and simply allow their opponents to slap them in the face as hard as they can. The sport has also recently made great strides stateside, as UFC President Dana White is thought to be contemplating developing a slap fighting league. The sport has been heavily criticized in parts, however, given the complete lack of defense, which means competitors are simply expected to stand there and take a full-force slap to the face. Say what you like about MMA, but the last thing you will hear from any referee is protect yourself at all times, something which is seriously lacking in this slightly barbaric sport. While we're certainly not dying to see this one in the Olympic Games, stranger things have happened. The dunk contest is coming through next. Stay with us. I mean, the whole idea of the Olympics is to test the athleticism of competitors, right? And what better way to do that than to incorporate one of the highlights of the All-Star Weekend into the Games? Everyone loves to see some of the coolest, gravity-defying tricks, and these guys are always dreaming up new ways to get the ball through the hoop in the most creative way possible. The contest is judged on creativity and showmanship too, so the athletes actually go out of their way to put on a really great performance, which is more than what can be said for at least a few Olympic sports, which we won't mention here. Do you guys think the dunk contest should appear in the Olympic Games? Next up, we're talking parkour. One for the Office fans among us, parkour, according to Jim Halpert, is the internet sensation of 2004, as well as being in one of the Bond films. He explains that it's pretty impressive, and the goal is to get from point A to point B as creatively as possible. Of course, we see Michael, Dwight, and Andy trying to implement their version of parkour. While Jim explained they are technically taking part in it, as long as point A is delusion and point B is the hospital. If you haven't seen the clip, you need to look it up on YouTube. Parkour is possibly one of the most challenging sports around and involves some pretty amazing feats of creativity and athleticism when done correctly. The sport pits some of the most agile people on the face of the planet against each other and is almost as athletic as gymnastics in that regard. Do you guys think parkour should be in the Olympics? We have underwater hockey coming through now. Stick around. One of the most bizarre sports on today's list. Underwater hockey pits two teams against each other. The aim of the game is to push the puck along the floor of the pool with a handheld shortened stick-type device. Of course, you must remember to breathe, so competitors can often be seen abandoning their position to return to the surface to gasp for air. This kind of hinders the individual goal aspect, which is synonymous with other team sports like regular hockey and football. And if you do get greedy and attempt to take everyone on, you could easily end up in the hospital, also known as octopush. This one is probably a little too dangerous to be genuinely considered for the Olympic Games, but it is fun nevertheless. Have you guys ever seen this one? The beer mile is up next. You've probably heard of the beer mile. Competitors line up at the mile marker and must down a 12-ounce beer before then undertaking a mile-long run. Sounds easy, right? Well, problems begin when you complete the first mile and must then down another beer before running the next mile. Oh, and then you have to repeat that process another 2 times. As you might imagine, this can get pretty messy, as many of the athletes' stomachs often fail them, and they end up throwing up around the course. Pretty brutal. Of course, there's very little chance of this one getting the nod in the Olympics, but just like underwater hockey, it's a pretty fun game. Have you guys ever taken part in the beer mile? And finally, it's slam ball. Remember this one? Slam ball is similar to the dunk contest, but the thing is, there are 4 nets and 4 trampolines set up around a modified court, which sees competitors compete for the biggest air and bigger dunks. Of course, it's also pretty dangerous, as it's relatively easy to mistime a jump and end up either in the crowd or even bouncing off the net itself. There's also the 90s throwback style headbands that the game, for some reason, sees its participants wear. While this is probably towards the bottom of any potential list of sports the IOC is considering adding to the Olympics, it's one of the most fun sports you'll ever see. Check it out on YouTube. As usual, thanks for dropping in on us today, and remember to tune in again next time when we will be discussing all sorts of other cool bits and pieces. And why not do us a solid by liking and sharing today's video, while also sharing it with any Olympics fans you guys might have lurking on those socials. Bye guys!